Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of TCG Talk, back today with another video. And in today's video we're doing the old classic tier list. Not so much a tier list, more just talking about what heroes I think get better or worse post ban announcement that we had yesterday. If you haven't checked that out, definitely go check it out. There was a huge ban list that came out for Flesh and Blood, and yeah, we're just going to talk about what heroes I think get better, what get worse, and have some fun with it and get your thoughts as a community. So if you're new to the channel, welcome. Thank you so much for stopping by. If you're a long-standing supporter, thank you so much as always. Feel free to check out the Discord down below as well as the channel membership. We're back up and running with the videos. Our life finally slowed down enough to where we could do this consistently. And honestly, some new life has been breathed into the game in a good way. So we'll get right into it. So this is all gut reactions. And if anyone has a different opinion, please let me know. Like, this is just my initial take. I went through each hero and really thought about, like, you know, what does Zen not even being out of the format, but what does Zen not being as powerful do to the format, right? And then how does that affect other decks? Like, New is a prime example. New rose to prominence, one, because she's a powerful deck, but she also is a very heavy counter to Zen. So if she doesn't need to be there to counter Zen as much, is she still viable? And we'll talk about that. So getting right into it, we'll talk about the no changes because that's the easiest one. Everyone listed there: Arachne, Betsy, Olympia, Bravo, Bolton, Teklavos, and Vincent and Viserai. I don't think get any better. You could argue maybe Vincent gets a little bit better because she was... So Vincent, you could argue that if Enigma ends up being where I think she will be and like is way more represented, then you could see Vincent get better just by proxy of being a good counter to Enigma. Not a direct counter, but a better counter because of the rune chance, because of the unpreventable damage, stuff like that to pop all the ward, right? So I think Vincent could rise. Out of all of these no changes, she is the most likely to actually make a change. But other than that, I mean, unless you're playing Solar Plexus Bolton, I don't think any of these really make a significant change. So there's that. Then we'll go over the dead portion. It's more of a meme, but also true. Like, Fi now might be one of the worst decks in the game. It's not, obviously, but it's worse than Katsu, in my opinion. Even though Katsu gets really hurt by bonds, without Art of War and without Belittle, Fi is just like a really linear, not very spiky aggro deck. And you also don't have Toma Firebrand, so you can't even do like the Phoenix form, like more OTK-ish style build if you wanted to even try that. Now you have to like really just hope you don't get disrupted and can outrace some people, but there's so many decks that do it better. Katsu, even without bonds, I think is faster than Fi, and it has more on hits. Dio's faster, KO's faster. Like, there's just so many aggro decks that are faster, right? So I think Fi is truly like in dumpster tier now. Going up, way worse. Kano does get way worse, right? Now, is Kano still viable? 100%. Just because a hero is in the way worse category, or just because a hero is in the way better category on this list for me, I'm not saying they're tier 5 or tier 1 in terms of the meta. I'm just saying in comparison to where they were at the start before the bans, you know, it changes. But without Toma Aetherwind and Toma Fiendal, Kano's ability to stack gets so much harder. It slows down the stack by a long shot. You're not able to just do like blue tome, blue tome and draw out a bunch of cards. And it really, now for Kano, if he goes into an opponent that has like AB2 Spell Void 2 is the best way I can put it, good luck. Like, you're going to have to really somehow figure it out. And then if they find an Oasis before you can even get to your stack, the game's pretty much over because you're not going to be able to draw enough cards to get over that Oasis. It's just not going to happen. So Kano, I think his tempo plan is still very good, but I also think that he's now goes back to a deck. Before, he was a deck that was just a good deck. Like, it was a tier 1 deck, tier 2 deck, like top 5 deck in the game if piloted correctly, in my opinion. But now it's just a deck that kind of comes back into the fold when people least expect it type thing. It still has that initial like boom power, but that's it. Also, and I'm going to try to put a little bit of Rosetta. We don't know all the cards yet, so I'm trying not to put too much emphasis on Rosetta on these changes yet until we see all the cards. But if Rosetta is a fairly powerful set, even remotely, and people are packing AB2, AB3 to also deal with Rosetta heroes, Kano is going to get hit by that really bad as well. Katsu, as much as I hate to say it, obviously the deck gets way worse. I still think the deck's playable. I'm not saying it's a good deck or it's a meta competitive deck. I think it's definitely a specialist deck now. I don't think it's dumpster tier. I think you can do an even bigger than that build that's just fine. I'll talk about that in tomorrow's video. I still think it can play fairly well. And if we move into more of a mid-range meta, Katsu can hang with them because he can play mid-range with you, uses Kadachi's and mask momentum value very well, and then hopefully be able to pop off with a good surging line or even a different line along the way. So that's just my opinion. I don't think the deck's in tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 by any means. It's probably like a C tier deck, right, if you do like A to D. But I think the deck's better than people are giving it credit for. Also, side note, again, bias, but I love that Bonds got banned in terms of what it does for the ninja class because, yes, it puts us down a little bit again, but it doesn't gatekeep the class anymore, and for me, that's more important. When it comes to slightly worse, Prism's Tome of Divinity ban does hurt her a little bit. There's two sides to this. One, it hurts her aura plan or her vestige plan. I think you can still run vestige, but it's just not as potent anymore. I totally get why they made the bans the way they did. I think Prism now is going to become a little bit more of an Unga Bunga build. Maybe we'll see a switchboard Prism list come back into play. Who knows? But it definitely does hurt her ability to execute that loop and just to play the vestige plan with a lot of value, right? I think what's also going to hurt Prism is Brute is going to go way up. Levia does get a little worse without Art of War, in my opinion, until people figure her out. But KO gets a lot better. Reinhardt even gets a lot better. I think that Guardian, like especially Victor, even gets a little bit better. So Prism's going to have a little bit more of an issue, I think. And a lot of skilled pilots are still going to make the deck shine, but it's you're going to have to go back to the drawing board a little bit, in my opinion. Then we have Uziri. I think, honestly, Uziri's a weird one. So she definitely gets slightly worse because she was a deck that still also was slightly promising with Shoma showing out on her by winning the event. But also, I think that if Enigma and Prism... So if Enigma is the top illusionist in the format, which I think she will be, then I think Nu is better because Nu's just better into Enigma with Siren's Call and other like hate pieces. But Uziri is better if Prism's in the meta because of popper count and because of the ability to like highly disrupt other decks. I wouldn't count Uziri out. I think Uziri is just always going to be a solid deck. Like even on her worst day, she's a good C tier deck. On her best day, she's like a high B, right? But she does get slightly worse. Zen gets slightly worse. You could argue way worse, but I want to see the jury still out on Zen, even without Bonds, and without Art of War. The deck still can hum. It still can transcend turn one, and then basically be able to transcend on command with the amount of cheat cards it has. Still has traverse. Still can do pop off stuff. It's just not going to do degenerate stuff anymore. I still think it's a very solid aggro deck. Do I think it's the best aggro deck in the format right now anymore? My initial reaction is no. I think Dash.io and KO both are better. You could even argue Azalea is better now. But regardless, I still think it's not a bad deck, but time will tell. And then Nu gets slightly worse just because her whole prominence was built to counter Zen. So without that, she can target a little bit better. She can play into Enigma a little bit better. She can actually play into Warrior a little bit better than Uziri can. So she still has ways to target other parts of the meta, but we'll have to see if she can stay relevant or not. So then we move up to the slightly better. Victor does get slightly better. I think Victor's a very good deck now. It kind of goes back to that heavy hitters Victor that can really just outvalue the opponent and doesn't really have any too crazy bad matchups other than Nu. And if Nu goes down, then Victor gets even better because that was Victor's one kind of like crappy matchup or really crappy matchup. Dorinthia, I think, gets better because I think Hatchet Story is now a thing again. I think you can go back to playing Hatchet Story. If we do go into a mid-range meta, Hatchet Story is amazing. It doesn't get hurt by cash-in or anything like that. So I think Hatchet Story is very good. Dash, although she's close to Living Legend, I think it's just fine. She always does well in like a mid-range meta where she can run hybrid and kind of play both sides of the field. Max, also in a mid-range meta, I think it's a lot better. You could argue Max gets way better, not in terms of like being a tier 1 deck, but just way better in general if we go to that mid-range meta because Max can just set up, right? Azalea gets slightly better. She goes back up to being one of the better aggro decks and better disruptive aggro decks in the format. Kasai, even though she lost cash-in, I still think she gets better technically. Now, is she the best warrior? No. I think Dorinthia is better. And you could even argue that Bolton and her are about the same. But I do think she gets better even without the cash-in solely because the format might slow down a little bit and she can run her game plan. I think out of all the heroes that were directly affected kit-wise by the bans, Kasai got hit the least, in my opinion. Cashin was just a very high value card in her, but it's not a crippling card that she needs, in my opinion. Reinhardt's gets a lot better. The slower the format goes, and the more people want to block as a mid-range builds, the better Reinhardt's going to get. Reinhardt also has a very good addition coming in Rosetta with the card that can, banish permanently a card that you banish with Intimidate. I think that card's very good. Will it push Reinhardt over the edge? Probably not, but it definitely brings Reinhardt out of dumpster tier, which is where Reinhardt was. Riptide also gets better, funny enough, because Zen was the one weird matchup. So there's 3 matchups in Riptide that are truly problematic. Kano is terrible, and if we see less Kano, that's automatically Riptide's worst matchup, and it helps a lot. Zen was a little bit problematic, depending on the build you were running, but it still was a little bit rough. And the last one is Victor, which still might get a little bit better. But honestly, the aggro variant of Riptide now gets a lot better. And the aim build gets a lot better. So I am excited to see what Riptide can do in this format. And Riptide has a pretty good matchup into Enigma. It can get a little squirrely sometimes if you fall behind on tempo. But especially the aggro variant can really give Enigma fits with the traps pinging and taking out her auras. So that's it. Then you have gets way better. So these 3 heroes, I think, all get way better. Enigma gets way better. I think, honestly, if you leave Rosetta out of it, which isn't too long from now, right? But currently, right now, in my opinion, starting September 9th, I think Enigma is the best deck in the game from a matchup spread perspective. I think she is the best deck in the game until Rosetta comes out. Then some of those Rune Chant heroes might give her a little bit of a trouble, and she might bump down a little bit, which I foresee happening. Not a lot, but just a little bit. But I do think Enigma is the best deck if you made me pick one. But we'll see how that goes. Dash.io, I think it's tremendously better. I personally think Dash.io is the best aggro deck in the game now with Zen being gone. Tome of Fiendal going away doesn't really hurt Dash. A lot of the Dash builds I've been seeing the last week or two, they've been working Tome out of the build anyway. So with the new cards coming out in the Armory deck, a lot of people are starting to test the ones that have been shown and offline, and it's working out really well. I think she's going to be a really good deck. She can still do really dumb stuff. And then KO. I think KO goes back to similar how he was in Heavy Hitter. She's just going to be one of the premier decks. Super good value. Doesn't really have any bad matchups. Just does really, really well. But overall, this is where I see it. Let me know if you think anything's different. That's totally fine. It's not going to upset me or anything at all. This is just my initial knee-jerk reactions. And again, this is not where I see the tier list. This isn't a tier list. This is just who gets better or worse from what their previous position was. A D tier deck might now be a C tier, right? It doesn't mean, it's going to be way, way up there. Reinhardt's a perfect example. I think Reinhardt was a low dumpster tier D tier deck, and now the deck's a high C, right? In my opinion, or mid C. So just an example. But yeah, let me know what your thoughts are. I'd love to hear it. Thank y'all so much for watching this. If you like this type of content, please leave a like, comment, or subscribe. If not me, it's totally fine. Go to another creator, watch their stuff. We have a lot of creators doing a lot of cool stuff with the ban and restricted reactions. So go check out some other people's videos. Runaways put out a really good podcast today as well, one of the bigger creators. But Fab Unofficial is another shout out I want to say. They're on my creator sheet on my main YouTube page. Go check him out. He does some really good stuff. I like his take. So if you're watching this, Fab Unofficial, do really good stuff. But yeah, thank y'all so much. Y'all have a great rest of your day, and I'll see y'all next time.